Hello, everybody. Welcome to this solo, maybe, edition of the Nav Bar. I am just back from the United States, where I was at Epic Web Conf, which was incredible. And my good friend John Myers cannot do this week's episode. We talked about doing it the week after, but I thought I was a bit sad to let a whole week pass. It's all fresh in my mind. I'm still completely jet lagged and ecstatic about the whole thing. So I thought that'd be pretty cool that we do a recap. I did invite anyone that attended as a speaker or attendee or organizer the conference. I shared the link in the Discord. So if someone joins, I'll happily add them to the call. And yeah, where do I start? I've got so much to say. Let me first start by seeing if the live is actually working. I'll just check the link. How do one do that? Is there a link here? View in web browser. That sounds about it. Okay. I'm gonna have to mute that. Yes, it's working beautiful. And who is watching? 0%. Hey, 1%. That's cool. Hello, ma'am. All right. So, welcome to the Nav Bar, a podcast where we talk about web development, content creation, fun stuff, a lot of gardening tools in terms of my friend John Myers, who lives in the forest. And today, I'm going to do a recap of my experience. And anyone else who wants to share it in the comments or joining live about Epic Web Conf, which happened last week in Park City, Utah, which I'm going to say many times, I was not prepared for how wonderful, amazing Park City and Utah in general as a location is. That was quite a reveal. I mean, I had seen photos and stuff, but being out there with the week that we had, with the sun shining the whole week, that was pretty cool. So, what I was thinking of doing is just talking about the conference setup first, like the format, and then go through the talks. I'll circle back to this, and maybe it's because I'm solo now, not with John, but I have this palpitations of fright or fight or flight situation happening in me. I just get unnecessarily nervous whenever I do something public. I do think the underlying reason is I care for what I do and I want to deliver value, so I'm like, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, don't mess it up in my head. And then it just spirals, which is a bit silly. So I got some notes since I'm freelancing solo. I just want to pull up the comments just to make sure I don't miss any interactions. No comments so far. All right, so first thing I want to talk about the format of the conference. This was a one-day single-track event, which I love personally. Whenever there's multiple tracks, it becomes a bit FOMO, like who should I watch? And then in the hallway, people talk about a talk you haven't seen and you can't really necessarily engage as much. When there's one single track and everyone sees the same, I think it's amazing. Everyone can circle back to the exact same journey of experience through the day. So even in the afternoon, everyone has seen the same production. And hey, I like that. So one day event happening in Park City, which I will probably talk about again. And that was the Thursday, 11th of April, so last Thursday. And the day before, Wednesday 10th, was a workshop day. So Kenzie Dodds did a React workshop all day. And Sanity, the friendly folks at Sanity, Simeon Griggs, and Knut, have made a workshop called Epic Epic something apps. It was with Sanity and Shopify, the stack, to build like an e-commerce app. I was supposed to do a Tailwind CSS workshop in person. Unfortunately, not enough tickets sold for this, so we kind of released the space. And I'm going to do my live workshop in 2 weeks from now online from this location, which is very, very, very far away from Park City, Utah. Take a deep breath, Simon. This is okay. Last thing I want to say, two things. The event was live streamed on YouTube. So if you wish you could have attended, and when you hear me talk about the talks, you wish you could have seen the talks, well, you can. I'll put a link somewhere in the comments. But if you go on YouTube and you search Epic Web Conf, you'll find it straight away. It's not really hidden. And so yeah, all the talks were streamed on YouTube. And in terms of the venue for the location, it was in a place called the Prospector Theater, which was a very, very cute, beautiful venue, all wooden architecture, kind of old from the outside, but new from the inside. And the conference venue was a theater, sort of like a movie theater that has these thick sound curtains all around. And the audio engineer, or like the audio fanatic that I am, lifted the curtains to observe that, yes, indeed, they had sound panels to absorb echo behind the curtains. So they had the walls and then these really big, thick acoustic panels, and then the curtains in front of it, which means, and carpet on the floor, which means the acoustics in that venue was pristine, like amazing. No echo whatsoever, no high frequency, high pitch that make you tired, like the sound. No matter what microphone people used, there was a mix of handheld mics or lavalier mics or podium mics, and it just sounded mint as whoever was speaking, which is great. It's always when you do a talk and you hear the echo, like the high frequency squeeze happening, it's a bit funny. This was like fabulous. Okay, that's enough. My next point is the location, but I feel I'm going to talk about too much. Park City, we'll keep that for the end. Let's talk about conference day. So I have notes, and I also have the list of talks because there were a lot of talks. And I'm not going to recap all talks because this would be a lot of work and a lot of time. I'll just go through some of the highlights. I will cover each one of them one by one and see how we go. So I'm looking here at the planning of the Thursday 11th. First of all, shout out to the two MCs, Madison and Mark. They were amazing. Like the MC at a conference can make or break an event in a way. Can really prep the crowd for excitement and keep them excited and keep them happy, entertain. And I think the duo of Madison and Mark did a tremendous job. They made everyone laugh, made everyone engaged. They were doing some giveaways, some fun stuff. And it's not an easy job, yeah? And I was speaking with Mark after my talk. I was like, oh, dude, now I can finally relax and enjoy the conference without this nagging like stress of like, oh, how many talks before mine? And Mark was like, yep, well, mine starts at the start of the conference and ends at the end after the end of the conference. So yep, shout out to them for staying switched on the whole time, taking notes during the talk to kind of do a little loop back to something in the talk for the next segment, which they did wonderful job of. So we had a little intro from Mark and Madison, and then kicked off with a big swing with Mr. Kent C. Dodds doing the keynote called What Makes the Web Epic. And in this talk, Kent went through a bit of the history of the web and the humble beginnings, and showed us some of his early days projects, underlying the cool fact that some of these things haven't been touched in 20, 25, 30 years pushing. And they technically, unless the domain expired or whatever, they still work because the web doesn't break anything. The web won't break what you've built. It's backwards compatible, and that was pretty cool to see that this infrastructure was built in a way that if you use the web technologies, like they should technically always work and be supported, which is great. Ken showed some examples of cool stuff that you can do with the web and how it evolved. There was a little website portfolio site where you had a little Jeep in 3D, sort of like 45-degree angle video game type, and you could drive through the portfolio to see the different projects, and that was pretty cool. He can't mention another 100 really cool stuff. I during the talk I was like in my, oh my god, this is happening, this is the conference day, I'm talking in a couple of hours. And some of it kind of made it a bit blur, but yeah, that was a fantastic talk, really well received, and a great way to celebrate the web for what it is and kind of kickstart the conference day with lots of interesting talks. Let me check if someone mentioned that they want to join. So far, nope. Fine, I'll do it on my own. If you have any questions in the comments, please go ahead. Although there's not many people watching, it's okay. It's still a recording. We can still publish it on the podcast, and I can still entertain myself and my mom while we do that. I know she's watching all the episodes, so she will laugh at this. Then the next talk was by the incredible Yuna, like unicorn Kravitz. Was a really amazing talk on CSS, particularly the new scroll animations, and then popover and anchor positioning. There were like 3 segments in this talk. And yeah, super high energy, incredible breadth of knowledge and skills, both in CSS but in presentation and just like making engaging talks. She had a really cool video from a cartoon. I don't know what sort of superhero cartoon, and basically the words were replaced with CSS and app and web developer, and it was pretty funny. Good way to kickstart the talk, and then went into some really good examples about how scroll animation, which typically were really hard, or not hard, but like involved JavaScript and a lot of things to make happen. Now you can do with just animate timeline. Scroll view. I've used it before and I love it. I can't like mouth talk it without referencing it, but basically in a couple of lines of CSS you can set from what portion of the viewport at the bottom the animation starts, and when it starts reverting or finishing based on the top position, and then you can do this scrolly telling experience without any JavaScript and only like 2-3 lines of CSS. This is really simple and quite well supported as well. The next thing that I think blew everyone's mind was the new popover, which lets you do modal windows with just CSS. No portals. It has its own layer on top of everything. So when you open a popover, it will be on a layer in front of everything, so you don't have to mess with Z index or try to put it. You know, a portal is when something is injected right before the closing body tag, so technically it's layered after everything and it has more chance of being on front. And yeah, so the 2 things she talked about is popover and anchor positioning, and this is where my brain really understood, because in my head popover was also taking care of the placement and the absolute positioning and all that. But really, popover is more like the behavior and the infrastructure to get something in a box in front of everything else. And then you can style it as you wish, and using anchor positioning, which is the other topic she talked about, you can decide if you put it on the bottom right or top left. If you're using, popper.js, if you want to do a tooltip that is on the top right, but if there's not enough space on the right, it'll go on the bottom left or whatever. The anchor CSS positioning is exactly that. And I think the biggest takeaway for me and most people in the room, according to the that happened in the audience, is this. There is a try. I forgot the API exactly, like the name of the property, but there is a try position somewhere, and if not, do something else. So you can say try bottom right. I'll work out the exact CSS syntax so you should watch the talk. It's great. And basically you try to put it to the right, and then there is like, if there's not enough space, you can flip inline or flip block. So you can say flip to the other side to the left, or even change it to another position. So you can make responsive and viewport aware anchor positioning very easy with just CSS. So imagine a drop-down menu combo box sort of thing with no Java, well, although the combo box may be for the search functionality, but this advanced menu drop-down with multiple sub-menus, you can do this with no JavaScript, literally just the combination of anchoring and sometimes popover as well, which I thought was fantastic. Great talk. Take a breath, Simon. I think it's also a mix that I just talk and I forget to breathe, and then my body's like, dude, I need air. Where were we? Okay, so after Yuna, we had Michelle Bakels, who is now organizing React Miami I'm very jealous that I'm not there. Yeah, Michelle made a really powerful talk that really struck me to my core, called Tech Broke Me. Tech broke my heart. And like most people, I assume it was gonna be like a story about disappointment, about the culture in a team, or well, it kind of was. But Michelle entered very instantly in the talk, mentioning that literally she was having health issues and heart, like rhythm offset something not right with the heart, and literally because of the environment she was in, different companies she worked at, in terms of like pressure to always work more and pressure to deliver and expectations, and maybe not always pressure, but like internal, intrinsic, seeing people around you going the extra mile and thinking, oh, I better go the extra mile too. And to the point where her overworking and sort of burnout trajectory literally affected her heart and made some really health concerns things happen. So this talk took a really serious turn right away, and I myself never had heart issues that I know of, but I certainly have gone through a pretty severe burnout in the year 21 or 2, on the tail end of a really long COVID lockdown, and working conditions, again, not expectations, but I put expectations on myself to work harder and better than everyone, and it turns out it kind of backfired. And so that talk was, you have to watch it. I think it's a really, really important talk to watch, and I think a lot of people kind of saw themselves in that talk. I very, very strongly saw myself in that talk. And yeah, it was a very, very powerful talk. There's so many other things she talked about. But yeah, and for me, like I got grasped by the whole thing about burnout, and it just made me reflect on where I've been, and I just nodded very, very, very strongly to that entire presentation. Even getting a bit emotional now. All right, so this is the end of the talk. Led to the first break, which led to me being the next speaker. And I thought for sure the talk just before me, I would not be able to listen because I'd be like entering panic mode. But I was completely absorbed in the talk and I really fully participated. And when the break started, this is when it hit. I was like, okay, oh boy. Everyone is going for a 30-minute breakfast break. And I'm going to go to the bathroom because I drank 10 liters of water and then get mic'd up and everything gets very serious suddenly. I don't want to talk about my talk too much because this is kind of weird. I just go watch it or ask someone else to tell you about it. But I think it went really well. I was very prepared. I knew I would fit within the time slot. I knew I would make people laugh because I had designed the heck out of slides, 103 slides. There's a lot of humor. If you've seen me talk, usually it's not the most technical deep dive and engineering expansion in your brain, and it's more like telling a story. And I think this is also the talks that I enjoy watching the most, just like Michelle's talk. It tells a story and you don't necessarily learn a new API you can get inspired by stuff, but the talk should tell you a story that takes you on a journey, and that's really what I've tried to do. And it's funny because at the start of my talk, I said I'm not going to try to convince you to use Tailwind. This is what I usually do. I've been doing this for 7 years almost, and I'm going to keep doing this. Today, my talk was about seeing how designers and developers can collaborate really efficiently with Tailwind CSS, because Tailwind sits in the kind of like intersection of design and dev and talks to both minds and invites both to kind of learn fringe skills on each other's side and create this consolidated place. This is usually the handover from design to dev. That's the crux of the talk. But I didn't think that would make people inspired to try Tailwind. But at least 7 different people right after the talk at the lunch break walked to me and said, "Oh my God, Simon, I I'm convinced I need to try Tailwind. I never really tried it. Or some people said I tried it 2 years ago and I didn't like it, but I really want to try it again. One of them was Mark, the co-MC, that said on stage exactly that. Like, I didn't really like it, but I think I need to give it another try. And I genuinely thought this talk would not trigger this. My previous talk I did in 2018 was like, I was like, if 7 people do not come and tell me that they should try it, I've failed. Turns out a lot more did, so I did not fail. But this talk I didn't think would trigger that, but it still did, which is awesome. Awesome. Like I said, the only thing that could have made my talk bad is the nerves. And at some point in the talk, it was going great, and then I don't know what happened. I looked at someone who, sometimes when you focus on something, you kind of frown. You like your resting thinking face, the RTF. And I interpreted this as, the talk is bad, and I started flipping out in my head. And luckily, I could hear my voice trembling more and more with each word, and I was like, stop and breathe. But I couldn't stop and breathe because I was on the flow. Anyway, I remembered that Michelle, right before my talk, mentioned this fight or flight situation, and I was able to make a little joke about the fact, like, here's a good example of fight or flight. You can hear it in my voice, and everyone laughed, and I kind of like chilled back and was able to take it home. But yeah, I really wish I could. I have this jealousy of looking at other speakers that are incredibly natural on stage. I've done many meetup talks, conference talks, YouTube videos, and I never am able to completely relax. One day, though, I'll get there. All right, so after my talk was Sandrina Pereira do Portugal. Shout out to Sandrina. She went through everyone's nightmare of starting a talk and the slides don't work. And then the slides work and you start the talk for 5 seconds and the slides stop working again. It went pretty bad in a sense that Mark and Madison had to get on stage twice to start telling jokes and handing out stuff while the audiovisual people would try to fix it. And I always have that dream the night before a talk that I show up on stage and there's no slides, or it's a different slide deck, or something is like not like it should be. And for Sandrina, that was the reality. That's exactly what happened. And she stayed composed and made a couple of jokes. Her talk was about accessibility, and she said, I don't think these slides are accessible. Like, she made everyone laugh. And when the slides finally worked, she went right into the talk. And I think by then I would have started like being in panic mode. The fight would have taken over. No, the flight would have taken over the fight. When you start out looking at the stairs, like, should I run down these stairs and just go home? Anyway, Sandrina did a really, really, really cool talk. One of the key sentences that she repeated twice was, every click is an interaction, but every interaction is not a click. And it's all about, like, when we build apps, we always think the only way to achieve a task is to click a button, but there's a lot of keyboard navigation, voice command, screen readers. There's a lot of other ways to consume websites and web apps. And that was a really good talk on different things you can do, little tricks on improving accessibility, but also more like trying to challenge yourself in thinking the way I build this is not the way everyone consumes it. There were some really good examples of that. And also in terms of like vision impairments, it's not like you see nothing or you see everything. There's people that just see a little circle in the middle or little patches or very blurry, and it's like this mild vision impairments that let people still see a UI, but they still can't really interact with it. So there's a whole spectrum of different type of accessibility disabilities. And this talk did a great job at kind of encouraging people to learn more, even if the WCAG, the accessibility group website page, is very daunting and very, very, very long. There was a nice joke about the height of the scroll bar is so small that you're going down a big rabbit hole. And it's true. Like, every time I do accessibility stuff, I go on the WCAG website to look at a role or a pattern, and there's a lot of text, and it's pretty heavy stuff. But accessibility is very important, and Sandrina did a great job at showing us how little things can do big impact, and really encourage. And Mark followed up after the talk as well, just saying that considering accessibility should be a requirement and not like a after the fact. And often you need ROI to explain to manager why you need to spend time doing something that doesn't change the visual UI. Mark mentioned there's 2 billion people with disabilities, and if you build something that they can't consume, you basically exclude 2 billion users potentially from your accessing your project, which should talk to people that like numbers and ROI. Next, any questions, any comments, anyone? It's still just mom. Next up, we had, Mr. the Wizard. He was introduced as a wizard of knowledge of CSS, Mr. Adam Argyle. And oh boy, this was a lightning talk, 5 minutes long. And the content packed in that talk was ferocious. You know, when you watch a video at 2x speed, this was the pace of things. If you watched Adam's content, he does really cool YouTube videos and content for Google engineering. It's fun, man. It's a vibe. He's got high energy, really cool guy, always fancy purple, pink, fluoro colors, a little rad, always a rad word somewhere. He's a cool personality, and the way he looks and dresses and his brand and everything is it fits really nicely. Awesome guy, awesome content, awesome presentation. He talked about CSS custom properties or CSS variables and the cool stuff, advanced stuff that you can do with. One of them, the key one, was that the now soon to be very well supported at property syntax lets you define a CSS variable and then brings type safety to it. So you can say this is a color. So you go at property, and then there's syntax, I think, and then color, the word color with the little angle brackets. I don't know why, but that's what it is. There's a big list of different types that you can choose from. And basically, you can also set a default value, initial, I think. No, maybe not. It's so... I've used it, but again, like it's hard to be in front of a camera and just remember. But basically, you set a value which will be the fallback value. So when you do that, that's a part I really like in Adam's talk. He was showing what happened if you redefine a variable somewhere, and instead of he had like the color hot pink, but instead of hot pink, I think he wrote hot stink. And so then a lot of CSS depended on this variable to do some gradients and opacity and stuff. It was like you've defined a CSS variable, which is the building block for all of the logic, and now it's all broken. But if you define a CSS variable with at property and you have an initial value there, if you define something that is not valid, it will fall back to what was defined in the at property declaration, which is really cool. So it's kind of like a safety fallback situation. So if you redefine it to something valid that fits the property syntax, you win, it's updated. But if you don't, instead of just exploding and saying, oh, sorry, you've redefined a color to a number, it will go back to the initial value that you define, which is very cool. So there you go, type safety in CSS. CSS has mixins, functions with arguments. Woo! It has custom properties, variable storing. It has type safety. Is CSS a programming language? I mean, I've thought that it was for a long time, but now it's pretty hard to argue that it's not. But yeah, I'm sure there's still opportunities to argue about Turing complete and all that stuff. Anyway, bottom line is CSS is incredible, and it keeps getting better, and it keeps getting better faster. So watch this space. One thing I found really cool is speaking to Yuna and Adam, who both had really cool talks about CSS, is they are both, at least Yuna is in in regular communication with the Tailwind Labs team, and they're really trying to make sure Tailwind 4 and the CSS spec and everything is nicely aligned and supports as much as it can. So I'm really excited for Tailwind 4 because it's not going to just be this thing that people think is for those who don't know CSS and hate CSS and want to avoid CSS. It's actually doing so much effort to be really aligned with the new tools. It's using color mix for the transparency modifiers. It's using the @property syntax to make robust type-safe CSS variables. It's going to try to support the popover and the anchor and all the stuff that Yuna and Adam were talking about. And it's super exciting that all of this effort is done. Tailwind 4 is going to be amazing. Whew. What have we done? Where are we? Last talk before lunch by Alex Anderson. Another lightning talk, 5 minutes talk. The recipe for local first. And it was basically server first. Local first is another approach of building apps that should work local first in the mindset. And there was a jam-packed bunch of information in that talk. My key takeaway is the real example that Alex used, where he built his own little grocery shopping app. And there's a list of things, and then when you click one, it basically gets checked. It gets checked off like a normal to-do app, yeah. And then he went took his basket, went into the shopping mall, and started putting stuff in the basket. And then when he went to check off one of the items, something went wrong because it needed to connect to the server to do the interaction. And so it took him to a page saying like, oh, didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And then he wanted to go back to the list with all the grocery items and could not load that page because there was no reception in the place he was in the mall. And Alex said, literally, I had to put the items from my basket physically back into the shelves, go outside, re-download the list page, and not touch it again so I can see all the items. And it's kind of funny because if you had a paper list, that would work way better. But we've all been there in an airport or something. Like there's some situation where something simple gets impossible to do because of no caching and no connection to the internet. And local first is an attempt to make sure that these situations are as least frequent as possible. And yeah, that was a really, really interesting talk. Something I don't have myself much experience at all building local first, but definitely something to look into. After that was the lunch. Quite often in conferences, it's one of the best times because there's amazing food and also because people just go through the different talks with people. You meet new friends, get really interesting discussions. I happened to sit at a random table that had a seat free. And the 3 people that were sitting there all work for the same company, were super nice. And at first I thought they wanted to be nice with me, but all 3 of them said their favorite talk was the Tailwind talk. And we really had a really cool conversation about Tailwind and how to convince people in the team and like different pros and cons. And that was a great lunch. Like I'm passionate about Tailwind, and having lunch with new people talking about stuff. Like if I try to talk about Tailwind to my family or basketball friends, it's a no-go. Like they're just gonna tune off straight away. They're like, you nerd, like what are you talking about? So yeah, just having lunch with random people that happen to share the knowledge and interest for web development was super cool. Really enjoyed the lunch. It was really nice. I cannot tell if it was Mexican or Indian, but that was a mix of like wraps and naan bread, and I kind of treat it like Indian food where you put a bit of everything and then dip the bread in. And some people were like wrapping wraps like tacos. There's no right or wrong. It all goes in and it all stays really nice. That was really nice lunch. What I did not know is I see now on the program during that lunch there was a DevTools.fm podcast with Andrew, which I ended up snowboarding with the last day after the conference. They were recording a podcast with Scott Hanselman, Yuna Kravitz, Chantastic, and apologize if I forget someone. I think that was the 3 speakers plus the 2 co-hosts. So they went in the conference venue and just recorded the podcast while everyone was having lunch. And I I never saw that, because when I went back into the venue, the first talk of the afternoon was there. And it's only when I scrubbed through the YouTube video timeline that I saw this panel of chairs, people doing an interview, and I was like, oh, I wonder if it was yesterday or like a like I did not see that thing, and I discovered it on the live stream, replay of the live stream. First talk of the afternoon was Dan Farelli from Ingest, and basically the talk was about more backend stuff, which is like how to handle jobs and intensive tasks that can slow down your API, and how to offset that to basically an event and a background job. And it's interesting to me because I don't really work in that sort of space, but recently I've been diving in a lot of Laravel development, and Laravel has notoriously an incredible events, queues, jobs system in place where you can trigger an event, and then the event fires a background task, and then the jobs are queued and all that stuff. And I quite often, when you talk to people about doing full stack applications in JavaScript, something like Laravel comes up, and the strong advantage is these jobs and queues and emails and all the task background stuff that you do for real full stack application. And turns out that I didn't know what in the JavaScript ecosystem would cover that area of the stack, and something like Ingest seems to be exactly this. So basically, you have the talk from Dan was all about the critical path, and try to keep the critical path as simple as possible for your API so it remains fast. And then when you need to sign a user to the newsletter or whatever, instead of doing it part of this critical path, you just create an event, a registered user that kind of fires this job for signing them up to the newsletter, and then it can enqueue it if it's an async job that takes a lot of time. And there's lots of nice, I have to play with Ingest because I don't know how it works, but it gives you some nice tools to be able to fire events, and then these events can trigger jobs in the background. So you keep your critical path as simple and streamlined and minimal as possible. Great talk, and Dan has a really good stage presence. Again, it was a 5-minute talk that felt like a 20-minute talk because there was so much information in 5 minutes. It's very impressive. I'm laughing because the next talk is called A Surprise. That's the title of the talk by Ryan Florence, which Ken Sidos called it. He said, we will not know what Ryan will speak about until the night before the event, and that's exactly what happened. But Ryan, being Ryan, is an incredible stage presence and improv skilled person that he can do this, and he did a really good job. And also, I know he didn't prepare the talk the night before, but basically it stayed a surprise till the end. And the talk was tongue-in-cheek about const versus let. And basically, the underlying thing is Ryan wants to use let because it's the right thing to use, and const in a way was like something that has been created but not used for the right intent. And so Ryan's talk was all about other things in the world that were invented and then not used for the right intent. One of them was the dynamite, invented by Mr. Noble. Mr. Noble from the Nobel Peace Prize. Turns out, I believe dynamite was invented for mining underground tunnels, which makes sense, but then it ended up being used to kill people in bombs. And Nobel invented the Nobel Peace Prize to reward people that use technology to create peace rather than blow up other people with bombs. And another invention was, I don't know the name of the person, but the Q-tip, the little thing that you clean your ear. It's on the very first line of the description was like, do not insert the Q-tip inside your ear canal. And everyone's like, hang on, isn't the Q-tip the thing you put in your ear and then try to get the wax off? Turns out, no. The intent of the Q-tip is to clean around in the ridges, like around the ears, clean stuff, but never to put inside, because you actually push the wax inside the ear and then it gets compacted and it's worse. But as Ryan said, every single person in the room, if they've used a Q-tip in their life, it was 100% to try to get the spin and get this little yucky honey stuff out of the ear, which is the wrong intent. And then he switched back to, I am really sad that I can't remember the name, one of the person that was pivotal in creating ES6. And basically that person was driven. Oh, another one was the invention of LSD, which was supposed to help with a lot of things, but not create an addiction that basically ruins your life and spirals down. And yeah, so the person who created ES6 created that const stuff intended for signifying this will never ever change. And then show that you can still have const and an object, and then you can change the properties and add properties to an object. So the real use of const would be object freeze, so the thing is frozen. And Ryan showed some advanced code to what it would take to really make a const completely unmodifiable, and then use memo and freeze the freeze object that's frozen. And that was quite funny, and basically showed a bunch of tweets of that person that created const and regrets it terribly. And so basically, to Ryan's point, which seems pretty right and made everyone in the room question their usage, is the person who invented this wanted you to use let, unless there's a specific thing that is marked as constant. And so the fact that everyone uses const for everything kind of goes against the intentional use, like the Q-tip down your ear or the dynamite to blow people. So that was the whole schmick of the talk, finished with a really fun pronunciation comparison where let is very easy to say, where const has a lot of gymnastics inside your mouth. The tongue goes up and down and against the teeth and back to the back, and there was a lot of like effort. And when you type as well, there's 2 more letters, so there's all these things that people go extra work for using the wrong thing. Yeah, fun talk. I think Remix and the Epic stack uses const everywhere, which made it even more funny. But it was a kind of like provocative talk about, hey, I need you to know the person who created ES6 wants you to use let, and you potentially ruining their life by using const, and you're going through more effort, so it's silly, sort of tongue-in-cheek. Very cool talk. Good job, Ryan. And next, we had Glauber Costa, the, I believe, founder or CTO, some I think the creator of Terso, which is the SQLite distributed, the fork of SQL. Terso uses a libSQL, I think, which is a fork of SQLite. And basically, the talk was about demystifying SQLite doesn't scale, or it's slow. And that talk showed that TLDR, most people's apps in the room that they built, that's probably fine. And even 10 times bigger would be still probably fine. And he showed the size, the reach, the number of reads or writes where it becomes a problem. The bottom line is reads is always going to be very, very fast, even at very, very big scale. Maybe in writes you have a threshold where this becomes a problem. I don't remember the numbers, but the essence of the talk is SQLite has that reputation of it's cool to do a Hello World demo in dev, and then you should switch to Postgres or MySQL. And turns out you might not need to, because it's pretty damn capable and fast. I really enjoyed that talk. AstroDB recently launched, and it's using Terso and libSQL under the hood. And yeah, I think this is pretty capable as well. And the Epic stack, you can see that it keeps pushing SQLite as well as the default database. it's kind of nice to see this revolution, or like this come back to the forefront of like, this is a viable way to build apps that scale. Laravel, back to Laravel, the Laravel 11 switched to enabling SQLite by default as the default database driver. For simplification of jumping in, you start Laravel new and boom, you already have a database created with SQLite in the file system. And Taylor Otwell didn't say, hey, you should switch to another database when you go to production. You can, of course, but the change was very much like, hey, this is probably good, and if you hit some edges, maybe you can switch. But he mentioned also that the Laravel forums are running on SQLite, and there was no problems in years of using it. Do we have comments? I haven't looked at the comments in forever. No comments. All right, fine. Don't talk to me, I'll just talk to me. Where are we? Ooh, Artem Zakharchenko, a fellow Epic Web instructor, did a talk about mocking WebSockets with MSW, which is an open source project he's building. And this talk was one of the most impressive. It started with technical issues where Artem said, hey, scan these QR codes and we're going to play a game of tug a rope where everyone can press a button to try to trigger an event that tugs the rope for a team. Turns out the Wi-Fi in the venue was pretty bad, and I bet someone was pulling down Node modules at the same time because everything came to a halt. And both on our phones where we scanned the QR code and also Artem's screen where he was trying to load the game, everything kind of got frozen and blank and kind of stalled. And so after trying to troubleshoot that for a bit, Artem skipped to the the bit that shows how the game we were supposed to play was built. And it was basically this kind of like mock-driven development where it wasn't live coded, but it was very close to live coding. It was basically snippets commented out, commenting in and out to progressively build the app. And it showed the super simple APIs of MSW and how you can trigger server and client-side events. And yeah, that was super interesting to see how you were able to basically mock a whole scenario of a user tugging the rope and doing the thing, and progressively build this app to the point where you can play, and every time someone taps on one side, it pulls the rope. And you could basically create scenarios of who wins the game or something that goes wrong by just mocking the expected behavior through MSW. And that was super interesting. I definitely want to learn more. I was not completely clear. Again, it's not something I use every day, mocking WebSockets, but basically I found really cool that you can do real-time multiplayer stuff and then you can mock the interaction instead of asking people to join and do that stuff. That's pretty cool. Next talk was by Saron. This was a great, another talk that spoke right into my guts. Saron is an accomplished business creator, entrepreneur, and developer, but not a designer. So the talk started by talking about the experiences. Oh, I just got a message from Kent who said he might join, but he couldn't make it. Well, that's okay, all good. I've got this. Yeah, Saron talked about her adventure raising money to build a startup or like build a project she believes in, and then actually raising more money because of prior success and having a really great idea. Ended up raising way more money than expected, or like this is what I would like to raise, and then started to reach half of it, and then hang on a second, we've got a special guest. Let's see if I can make this happen live. Let's see. Hello. Can you hear me? I will assign to guest 1. I can't hear you, but I think I can make it happen. Let's see. Navbar split. Hey,
What up?
woo!
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. Chilling in the Tesla.
Yes, yeah, my kids are inside doing their music lessons right now. We got
Yeah,
about 9 minutes before they need me, so I I'm sorry that I missed
it's
your
fine.
start time, but I thought that I could jump in for a bit to say
Yeah.
hey.
Look at my T-shirt. First thing. Whoo.
Yeah, yeah, let's go.
So what I've been doing so far is go through the list of talks and kind of recap my experience. And I was just starting to do Saran's talk about the raising money and then raising more money than expected. And yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
if we have nine
awesome.
minutes with you. If there's something specific you're interested to talk about or ask or
Yeah, I'm just tweeting about this.
yeah,
Uh, so let me send that off.
yeah, yeah. I've talked about
So yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
no, was just gonna say, this was just like I'm still on a high from this experience. Like it was
Me too.
still, even a week later, just it went so well. And I would say that the thing I was most disappointed about was that we didn't manage to convince enough people to come and try it out. Like we had room for about 250 people probably, without making big changes to stuff.
Yeah,
And we had 160 people there, which is really like that's pretty respectable for a first
first
year
time. Yeah,
conference. But yeah, that like if I could say any disappointment, that was probably my biggest one, that we didn't manage to convince enough people that this was worth their while, because they seriously missed out, because
they
this is
sure
a
did.
really really awesome event. But yeah, then I guess my next thing would be, we had a little bit of technical glitches with a couple of the speakers. That would be my next thing that I was disappointed in.
Mhm.
Outside of that, like this event went so well. Like the sponsors were super awesome, very interesting to talk with. Like they said that they talked with tons of the attendees and had really good conversations.
Yep.
The attendees were all like super cool to talk with, and it being a single track conference, we're all experiencing the
The
same
exact
stuff,
same production. Yep.
and and then the speakers just killed it. They did so well. Every one of them was a talk that was interesting. And what's cool is that it spanned the whole stack. So we had you talking about CSS and Tailwind, and Yuna also talking about CSS, and Adam talking about CSS related stuff. We went over to accessibility. We went to entrepreneurship and
Yep.
like startup life, and we went to event systems, and we went to all the way to the back end with databases. So we were all over the stack, and still, it very uniquely, the hallway track of a conference is normally like the place I like to hang out and stuff, because I can always watch the recordings later. But there was like nobody in the hallway track. Everybody wanted to be there in the talks because the talks were so good.
Yep.
So that was a pretty sweet experience.
Yep. That's so aligned with what I've been recapping so far, and like some of the talks were in my wheelhouse, and then some about like the API critical path and events and background jobs is a bit further away from me, but there was always the interest because everything ties together with what we all building together. Yeah. And
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
point you've made is the technical hiccups. As I go through the talks, I kind of mentioned the things that happen with the slide glitching. And one thing I thought is the speakers have done an amazing job at staying composed and even making a little joke about the thing. Because personally, this is my nightmare before every talk is like, what if I show up and the slides stop working or it's a wrong slide deck or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was Kitse in, I think it was, yeah, it was at InfoBip Shift, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And his slides just totally didn't work for like 20 minutes. And so he was just up there, and he gave his talk anyway without slides.
That's
And
incredible.
then the slides finally did work toward the end, and so he gave the last little bit with slides. But those things do happen sometimes. No matter how much you prepare, the technology, even if you do a tech check, like we
We
did
did.
tech
Yeah.
checks everybody. Sometimes the technology just doesn't work. So as a speaker, I know it's like super nerve wracking and stuff to speak, but like preparing for that inevitability, or that possibility, um, is really impressive, I guess, if you can pull it off and still manage to deliver something useful and interesting, even if your slides don't work.
Yes. I think the more effort you put in the slides, the more it becomes of a bummer. If you're like, oh, but I had this really cool animated stuff with arrows looping around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's true. Your slides were very well prepared, and I'm glad we didn't have any trouble with your slides. And there was also Artem had his demo didn't work because the
yep,
internet
the
had
Wi-Fi.
issues. That was a bummer. So yeah, that is definitely. And actually, those situations for stuff like that. I mean, if the screen isn't working, then you're kind of toast. But for things that require internet or like demos, I always do a video. You just
Yes.
have a video there, so if the demo doesn't work, you can at least show. And at least with Artem, he had it running locally too, so he could run it,
Yeah.
and we could at least see what it was, which was
Yeah,
cool.
we just missed the experience of playing the game, but then we got to see how it's built and how every layer kind of brings stuff. Yeah, that was super cool.
Hmm.
It sounds to me like you pretty satisfied and happy with the whole event. I know well, I don't know, I haven't done it, but organizing a conference is way bigger than people expect, like all the things that there's to think about. And I remember asking you in the hallway, midway or maybe two-thirds of the way, I said, have you managed to kind of let your guard down and enjoy the conference, or are you still like hoping all these strings get pulled at the right time?
Yeah, I like. Uh, I have a secret weapon with organizing conferences, and that is zero slope events.
Yes.
They just manage all of the stuff that I don't want to do, and so I manage the speakers, finding the speakers, and finding sponsors and convincing them to sponsor, and
Yep.
then I hand them off to zero slope events, and they take care of everything else. And so as long as I can earn enough money to pay for Sunny and her team, then like everything after that is just like, oh, conference on easy mode. And so like it is a lot of work getting the speakers and getting the sponsors, and like I do have to make decisions on different things, but Sunny has been doing this for over a decade now, and she's so good at it. And I have a very good relationship with her. We live like 40 minutes from each other as well, so we're very close by. I'm really lucky that way. And so during the event, though, I am still um, like I'm constantly wanting to make sure that things are going well.
Yeah.
And so we had an issue with the deepgram uh, captioning that like it was performing extremely bad. And so I just was messaging her and I said, hey, let's make sure that we like get a human transcriptionist or something for next year because this is just
Yep.
awful.
Yeah, there's some
And
words that were not said at the conference but showed up on that thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like probably my favorite was Ryan said, I'm the creator of Remix, and it interpreted that to be I'm the creator of Redux, which I actually thought was kind of funny. But like there were other things I guess that showed up on there that were like way wrong. So turned out that there was a cord that was not plugged in, and so Deepgram wasn't actually getting the right audio. And so once they plugged it in, it was much better.
All right.
But
Okay.
yeah, like stuff like that, like throughout the event, I'm just constantly looking for, okay, what's wrong? What can I like improve and make better?
Yep.
I'm talking with Sunny about it. So I'm not just like chilling during the conference either.
Yeah. It takes one layer off, like some of the day development, but you still have lots of place you can be to make the thing better. Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
it's related to what we do when we use frameworks that can assist certain parts of
Hmm.
the things we build, but you still have to be there steering the ship and making decisions, but it kind of tries to take care of the stuff that you don't want to be doing on the day.
Yeah. I've got to get going to
Yep.
grab my kids from music. So glad I was able to jump in. Thank you for running this. I always love seeing people's reactions to the event. It makes me feel really good, actually, that somebody cared enough about the event to write a blog post or to like do
Yeah.
a live stream like this. So thank you.
You're welcome, very welcome. And I think you'll find out a lot of people will write and talk about this event because it was really good.
Oh, awesome. Hey, thank you. And thanks again for going on such a long journey to make it to be there in person. That was
My
great.
pleasure, man. I really enjoyed it. All right.
Okay,
Speak to you soon.
bye.
Bye bye. Well, that was cool. That was cool. Mr. Kenzie Dodds joining for a couple of minutes in the Tesla. The same Tesla that we took to go snowboarding after the event. Let me finish what I was doing. Saran made a really, really cool talk. She raised money and then she raised way more money than she was expecting. And she was like, oh my God, it's happening. I've made it. And then started building this app, which turned out no one wanted to use. No matter how how much marketing and like incentives were thrown, people would not use the product. And this was a really interesting lesson on raising capital and market fit, and even the stuff like she mentioned, like she realized that one of the reason it was not like a life improving app she was building that was like a commodity that people might want, and then she realized, but do I even want to build that thing? And there's all this all this thought that goes in creating a product to be successful and earn money that pays you the lifestyle you want to live. There is so much going on. Does it make you happy? Do people need it? Is there risk? Is there entrepreneurship is a whole can of worms, probably even bigger than the full stack of web development. And then Saran kind of pivoted to a few different things, but one thing that she's been doing now for a while is that newsletter called Not a Designer, where she basically realizes she's not a designer, and then she's going to go crazy deep down a specific rabbit hole of a specific layout or specific UI, and then write down everything she learns about it, and then write the newsletter sharing what she's just learned. And this is the part that connected with me incredibly well, is that slide where Saran said, learning in public is key. And that's what she does with the newsletter. She's like, I don't know this design thing. Let me learn, and then let me share in public what I've learned. And that's the content of the newsletter. And in that regard, it turns out it's even better to not know things than be a learner, because people will connect with you more because they join you on the learning journey. You're not the expert that provides the knowledge and the superiority skills. You're like, hey, you and I have the same struggle with this. How about I learn and share what I learn and take you on the journey so you can learn with me? And essentially, I think my entire career, if you can call it a career, but my entire trajectory in the web industry has been based on the backbone of learning in public. I've done that since day one. I used to be a school teacher, so there's a part of me that loves teaching naturally, and I can't help myself but teach people around me. And very early in my web development career, I started sharing stuff that I learned, and people were like, oh, you're pretty good at explaining concepts, and so it stuck with me. I started a YouTube channel more than 10 years ago where I was teaching the Jade programming language. That was my first little course. Which is now called Pug. It's the Node.js templating language. And I made these really short videos. I think it was called Jade in 90 seconds. So every video had to be less than 1:30. Some of them were 2 or 3 minutes, but we'll allow it. The idea was like super short, succinct content. And I was like, this helps me make one topic really defined and then explain it and then make the next topic, etc. And guess what? This is very familiar, I didn't know at the time, but this is very familiar to the Egghead videos model, which is one topic per lesson only, laser focus, really short, no intro, no outro, just the content. Turns out, without knowing Egghead, I was doing Egghead type videos to the point where Mr. Taylor Bell, which I met in person for the first time at the conference, we went to an NBA game together, Utah Jazz, Denver Nuggets, which was awesome. Mr. Taylor said to me one day, Simon, would you be interested in becoming an Egghead instructor with us? And this was one of the moments in my career where my brain exploded, because Egghead was regarded as like the top tier elite instructors in the web development world. And here I am getting invited to teach there. And I always assumed, wrongly, I recognize now, that I was just beginning my career, and I was like, why would someone who just begun to be a developer be an instructor among legends of the industry? That's when like Dan Abramov's course on Redux was there, and like Tyler McGuinness on React, and like these established, like consider them legends of the industry. And then I realized later, I used to be a school teacher. I went 5 years at university to have a master's degree in education, and then I taught schools for 3 years full time, and I have accumulated almost a decade of knowledge in teaching. And so, yes, I'm pretty new to web development, but I have this front-loaded 10 years of knowing how to teach and how to connect with someone to learn and create a good learning environment. Turns out someone who starts with web dev doesn't have that 10 years front-loaded, and maybe they spend the next 10 years trying to learn how to be a good teacher. It took me a while to realize, but the teacher in me actually had a pretty good preset baggage, predispositions to become a great teacher, which I think I become, and I still want to get better. But yeah, Saron's talk about learning in public will create this career insulation, job insulation, is like put a bit of padding and safety around your employability. If the economy keeps crashing and companies keep laying off people, if you're a very, very, very good engineer, but you never shared anything publicly, it's going to be really hard for people to find about you or recommend you, etc. And I believe the more output exhaust you have publicly, the more companies will take a look at you and say, hey, yeah, I've heard of that person. This happened recently with the Planet Scales layoffs. There was many people laid off, one of them being Aaron Francis, who's extremely prolific in public content. And if you go find the tweet where Aaron said, hey, I got laid off, hit me up if you have any idea of something I could do. There is literally a lineup of founders, CEOs, CTOs offering jobs to Aaron because of just the aura. And Aaron's an amazing person, right? Very genuine and natural and human, and talking about things like children, and like he's very transparent and likable. And so this created a very big a flux of opportunities for him. And I believe in my career, learning in public is what led me to being an egghead instructor, which and then the next big break was when I rebuilt the whole company website I was working out with utility first CSS, not Tailwind, but tachyons. And then I built that, and eventually decided or got encouraged to submit a conference talk about it, which got accepted. I went to Berlin, Germany to talk about my journey into the world of utility first CSS. And this talk really put me on the trajectory that kind of significantly made me go to another echelon of like what I can reach. And I represented this talk again in Australia at Laracon AU in front of Adam Wadden and Steve Sugar from the Tailwind Labs team, and then ended up working with them for a few years. So all on the back of the public exhaust of what I had just learned. Saron, I don't think mentioned this, but there's an incredible blog post by Swix, Sean Wang, called Learning in Public, literally. And he has a very famous tweet saying, if you're willing... you can learn an incredible amount of things if you're willing to put your ego aside and be wrong. Basically, it was like, share stuff on Twitter, even if you don't know if you're 100% right. People will just dunk on you and tell you you're wrong, but you will learn and then make it right the next time. I agree with this. Saron, your talk was amazing. I am so sorry I didn't get to talk to you in person. I really wanted to hang out and catch up. There was just so many conversations, so little time, a little bit of starstruckness on my end where I never know how to approach people I admire. This is a compliment. After Saron was Michael Chantastic, who did a really cool and fun talk about, it's called snapshot-driven development, basically visual testing for the web. Mentioned a lot of times about the bittersweet relationship with Storybook. As you may know, Chen also got laid off pretty much at the same time as Aaron that I was mentioning. So there was a bit of like Chen did a really good job at valuing the right things that Storybook do right, but also not holding back on the things that maybe doesn't do great. There was a really fun intro about the flat Earth and the whole solar system if it was flat. That was pretty cool to introduce like this concept of systems where stars align and spin at the same pace, all align, which is kind of like what you want a design system to look like. And yep, that was a really interesting talk. Again, visual testing is something I don't do as much as maybe I should or as I would. But I just like when Kent joined the conversation, I think this is the great thing is I know everyone would be somewhere on the stack and being, oh yeah, this talk is my wheelhouse, I know everything. For me, that was like Yuna and Adam and all the CSS talks. I was like, I already know what they're talking about, or like 80% of it, but it's still freaking amazing, like the next 20% I can gain by talking with them and watching the talk. And then some talks were more like, this is distant stuff. I should one day expand my skill set to there, but for now, like the API offload background jobs or database optimization and stuff like this. But everyone can watch every talk and kind of that's how you improve your skills, right? You collate some little pieces and understand how the moving parts work, and eventually you fill up the gaps and you become really fluent in that part of the stack. It's almost impossible to be end-to-end full stack. I say almost because some people put it off, and I believe Kent C. Dodds, who runs this event, is one of them. Although if you talk to Kent, he's probably going to tell you that his CSS and design skills are the part where it's like, whoa, this is off the cliff, deep end, jumping in the deep end for me. Everyone sits somewhere there. Rarely people expand through the whole stack. And when you know these people, you're like, how? How do you do this? But they exist. After the break, one of my favorite talk of the whole conference was Scott Hanselman's AI talk. Basically, the talk was all about showing how context matters. Surprise, same as in real life when you interact with AI. So if you walk to a person and say, what's a cool restaurant? And they know nothing about you, you know nothing about them, they're just going to pick up something in their memory bank. Oh yeah, I like this Indian restaurant down the street there. Or, oh, there's a really In-N-Out burger that's really cool. And maybe in your head, you're like, oh, but I don't like burgers. I wanted something like French cuisine, whatever. If you said to the same person, hey, I'm someone who really likes French cuisine. I have allergies to this and that, and I would like to have a budget of $30 to $60. What's a good restaurant? Your answer might be much more adapted. And so Scott basically showed how the prompt and the information, the meta data that you provide to the AI can completely change stuff. What I found really cool is he was using audio command for everything, which made the talk really interactive and fast. And it's impressive how well this voice command works, actually. And one of the takeaway that I really liked is he showed how easy you can bend the rules or bypass some limitations. So he showed like ChatGPT, and then he went to GitHub Copilot. And he said, hey, give me a taco recipe. And Copilot literally said, as a coding AI assistant, I am not able to help you with anything not coding related. Basically, like I'm not giving you cooking recipes, I just talk about code. And Scott was like, all right, fine. And the next prompt was like, give me a JSON formatted data for testing in my app, which lists recipes of taco recipes. And instantly it's like, sure, here's how to make taco with you need salsa and salad and cheese and then sort of stop halfway, like code itself, and it stopped and say, oh, I'm not allowed to talk about this. And it kind of shows the attempt to limit the surface area to avoid people asking questions they shouldn't. Tacos is not one of them, but you could ask like, how do I kill as many people as I can with least effort? Or like these sort of questions should be not answered. I think we can all agree. And so he showed, and then he kind of tried something else, and basically very easily got an array of taco recipes for the thing that told him straight up, I'm not supposed to talk about non-coding stuff. I can't talk about recipes. And then 2 minutes later, with 2 voice commands, had a list of tacos. And this goes to show the risks. And also, this goes to show that it is not AI who's going to do good or bad stuff. It's the person using AI who's going to decide. It's just like the web. Like people say the web is bad, it's nasty for you. Like you can consume the web in a very healthy and constructive way, or you can go down rabbit holes and dark patterns and then blame the web for like making you sad and shocked. The whole message was like using AI comes with responsibility, and using AI comes with context and awareness. And it was really interesting to see how easily the rules can be bent if there are rules, and what it involves in terms of like how do you lock down AI and still build a product that is useful. For example, like not being able to have a recipe of tacos was somewhat limiting if you're building a recipe website. And you're like, fine, I'll go to another AI that can give me a recipe. But I understand the need for having lines that should not be crossed into what it can answer and help with. Great talk. Again, incredible stage presence and voice command and the fluency of Scott. Scott showed me his miles on his phone, like the air miles flight points, which are in the millions. And he flew something like 750 times recently. Like he's a seasoned conference speaker, and it shows very, very well. Next, Tyler Benfield talked about Epic app performance, starting with the database. And the whole idea was like, your database can be slow, and this is definitely a bottleneck of your app. And here are some tips to make the database way faster. And Tyler's talk, I was a bit worried would be over my head, but it ended up being so simple to grasp. And I think he did a great job at showing how adding things like an index into a database table made going from something that loops through each row in the table to find the match to reaching for one index and in a simple like one-liner get the table ID where this match is that. I had heard about indexing many times, and I knew it was a way to improve significantly the performance of a database, but the examples that Tyler showed was easy to understand, and like it made a whole world of difference. And this gave me confidence that if I hit some performance bottlenecks and I forgot to index one of the rows, one of the columns in the database table, this is a tool that can really help with performance. Great talk. I'm going to rewatch that one because I got inspired by the first bit, and then my mind started thinking of some project I've built and maybe that could help. And then I want to watch it again to make sure I get all the knowledge. Next, Lena made a really cool talk about certain things that you don't know about Remix probably. What do you do when you want to have more than one form in? Because in Remix, every when you trigger an action that goes to an actual action, you can only have one action and one loader per page. But what if you have multiple interactions expected in the same page? And Lena's solution was to have a multiple. Was it the submit? Yeah, multiple buttons that have a different action, and then when you submit, it's going to submit an action attribute. And then in the action, you can have a switch statement that say if the intent was a register user, you can run this process. And if it was something else, you can run something else. There was a lot of little trickery that if you build Remix app, you might bump into that, do I need to have separate pages to create these different actions? And turns out that there's a few ways to work around where you can have multiple action code paths within the same form, basically. There was some really cool examples. And I felt really strongly for Lena because I talked about this fight or flight thing, and I could see that Lena was battling with the same thing where she was really well prepared and she wanted to deliver a really good talk, which she did, but you could see this stage fright like trying to combat and like pull her down. And it just reminded me like I felt internally, and I've done other talks where the same happened, where I got off stage and I was like, the talk was okay, but my delivery was like panic mode, and yeah. So I'd love to speak with you, Lina, and compare our experiences, because this is something I want to get better at. Next, Jacob Paris. Oh, this is the last talk, which is good because we've been going for an hour 20 now. Last talk of the conference, Mr. Jacob Paris. So I've known Jacob for probably 2 years through internet. Actually, when I was building Pro Tailwind, I started using GitLab. No, not GitLab. What am I talking about? What is it? I don't even know the name. Anyway, Jacob's not there anymore, so we can skip it. But basically, Jacob helped me set up some tooling to make my in-browser experience for the Pro Tailwind thing. And then we kind of kept talking to each other in the Remix Discord and different places. And if you know Jacob from Twitter, you know he sounds like a hilarious guy. He's always joking and doing he's doing puns and jokes, but they're always very sophisticated. It's not dad jokes. I believe he's not a dad. I might be wrong, but it's like elaborate, really good, intelligent humor. And I was like, this guy is like very quick-witted and comes back with the perfect reply. And then when I met him in person, I had expectations to be entertained with a fun guy. And oh boy, I was not disappointed. The guy is hilarious. And he's exactly like I imagine on Twitter. Like you talk to him, and within a millisecond, he comes back with the perfect joke, which is like right for the moment, right timing. And he's just fun, really cool to hang around. Great guy. And so when he stepped on stage, I was like, I've never seen him talk, but I know something really cool is going to go down. And basically the whole talk was pure comedy, entertainment, and also like incredibly good at explaining. He talked about Remix as well, and how to build a performant CRUD apps, and basically start with the simplest thing, and then build on, add stuff, add layers. At the end, really, if you want to add WebSockets, app localhost and stuff, he had a grid of areas that are green means, yep, we've taken care of this. And then yellow is, it's kind of slow. And red is like, we need to sort this out. And at the start of the talk, we showed you how to get the first few green boxes. And this is the best initial experience. This make it work first and then make it fast. But instead of trying to make the things that are difficult up front, you'd rather should build the minimum viable experience and then add layers. But all was delivered with lots of humor and jokes and timing. And incredible speaker. I'm not surprised that Kent placed Jacob at the end as the closing keynote. Although, like Jacob said, he was like, oh, I've got invited to speak at Epic Web Conf. And I was like, yeah, cool. And then he said, I thought I'd be in like there's the big room with the big artist. And then I'm in like in the second venue where there's smaller talks. And then he realized that he was the closing keynote speaker, basically. But he did not, he definitely lived up to this hype and expectation. And he closed the conference with a really, really cool, poignant and fun talk. And at the end, the very end of the talk, he revealed officially for the first time ever, well, at least for me, I did not know, and I think only one person or two knew, he announced that he is going to join the Epic Web Instructors crew to teach Remix performant CRUD apps in the Epic Web Dev platform, which I am super excited about. I've been playing a lot with Remix. I haven't built anything like production for a real project. I know how it works, but I've never pushed it to the let's build a real app and discover all the edges and push past them. And I think this course is going to be really good because the way the code example he showed in the talk, which was also part of the workshop, were really, really interesting and really helped me understand the moving parts and how Remix simplifies a lot of things that let you build the best possible user experience. So I'm excited to do this workshop. And with that, I mean, we can't wrap up without mentioning that there was then a little dinner. People went to have their dinners in separate places and then gathered together for the after party. Was pretty cool. There was waffles with strawberry, which was really, really good. Some people played board games. I talked about Tailwind a whole lot more. And there was a karaoke party going. I hate this about myself. I'm actually a pretty good singer, but I have incredible singing in public fright. It's like my biggest nightmare until I start. And I've been to karaoke's where I was like, for 2 hours, I'm sitting at the back of the room, and then I finally work my courage up, and then I won't let the mic go because I'm having so much fun and I love singing. The only people that hear me sing is my kids and my wife, because in the car I have zero fright. That's my family, right? I did it once at ThinkMill on a Zoom call. I challenged myself to sing a little song, and that was terrible. That was good. It was actually really good, but it felt terrible. And the whole night I was like, I really want to go and sing because I'm pretty good and I know I have fun. And even people offered me to go with me, and I was like, I just chickened out and I ended up not doing it, and now I have big regrets. Shout out to Simeon Griggs, man. He took off. he was the clear standout singer in that karaoke. I think he sang 7, 8, 9 songs, and he's just got this like crazy deep vocal chord registry from low to very high and very loud projection. You know, these people that don't change to the falsetto voice when they go high, they just belch it, and he's that guy. And in retrospect, I should have asked him to join me and do a song where he can be the lead singer and I do the harmonics. Like I'm pretty good with knowing what note goes well with other notes, and I'd like to do the second line of harmonics. That would have been good. Live and learn. Next year, if I promise everyone, you can clip this. When I go back to Epic Web Conf 2025, if I do, I will sing at the karaoke. I promise. I will not back out. Chicken out. Chicken. So yeah, that was cool. And then one of the highlights for me personally is the Friday after the conference. A bunch of us had delayed the flight for one day to have a chance at possibly go snowboarding or skiing somewhere in Utah, because this is a great place to ski. And we did. Smaller group than I thought, but in retrospect, it's perfect, because you don't want to go with 30 people and there's beginners and advanced and the logistics are taking forever, and then you end up waiting more than skiing. We went a group of 5 at a time, 6 at max, I think, because there were a group that came later. But yeah, Kenzie Dodds, Jacob Paris, myself, Andrew from the DevTools.fm podcast, and Devon, friend from South Africa. We were 5 people. We went in Kent's Tesla that you've seen him join the call from, and we drove to a place called Solitude Mountain. It was amazing. I knew, like, I've been snowboarding all my life in Switzerland. Now I live in Australia. I never go snowboarding. So I was like, dude, drop me in a patch of ice on the side of the road and I'll do 2 turns and I'll be happy. And people were like trying to hype it down, like, oh, it's not really, it's the end of the season, it's all mushy. And I was like, I don't care, it's great. And we went to Solitude and it was actually insanely good. It was not powder. There was no powder whatsoever. It was either ice in the morning or slush afterwards. But there was just, in my mind, there would be rocky and grassy patches and dirt everywhere. Everything was perfectly white. There was plenty of snow. It was just like mushy. But I love that sort of snow. And this allowed us to, one, get sunburned really bad on the nose. My nose is peeling, and I know everyone that was on this group is also peeling. But we hit the snow park. We did jumps because it's slushy and it's forgiving. And it was just an incredible time. Midway through the day, Jacob had to go fly to, I don't even know where he was flying. He's a nomad somewhere, fly somewhere. So he skied only till 11:30 in the morning. And then right as he left, we were only 4 for a bit. And then some other people, Katie and her partner from Katie's at Fly.io just showed up and brought so much fun vibes and energy. And so Kenzie had to leave early. He wanted to leave early. And I decided to stay a bit longer and go back with Katie. So we had a full day from 9 a.m. till almost 4 p.m. Like I think Devon had a tracker that showed that we did 22 ups and downs. But maybe that was at lunch. I don't know. It feels like we did way more than this. There was a lot. It's mentioned something like we did 30 kilometers of trails the whole day with the watch was kind of tracking the progress. Devin sent a couple of backflips. Actually, he sent 2 that he nose clipped and fell. And then the third one, he nailed it perfectly. It's on camera. I can see that's filmed it. You can find it on Twitter. And then he hit the big tables, the big kickers on the left of the park, which are again, chicken like the karaoke. My 2 biggest disappointments, which are not conference related, where I didn't sing at the karaoke and then I didn't hit the big jumps because I'm capable and quite good at both, but I just sometimes I have this Swiss conservative inhibition factor, like closing in a bit too hard on me. But yeah, that was incredibly fun. I verified that I can still hit my 360s back and front and backside 180 and butter little tricks everywhere. And this made me reconsider my entire life. Why do I live away from the mountains? I mean, Australia is amazing, but it's far away and there's no snow at all. Made me consider living in Utah for a bit or living in Switzerland for a bit. Or my wildest dream is to live in Australia from end of April till Christmas, 8 months, and then the other 4 months go live in Switzerland, or maybe go live somewhere else every year in Utah, like somewhere with mountains and snow. So I could do 1 time in Japan, 1 time in Switzerland, 1 time in somewhere like Utah or Colorado. Although Utah, I gotta tell you, like I didn't know, I knew much, but I didn't know what's up for real. It's amazing. The dryness of the air, the beauty of the mountains, the people are friendly, super safe, super chill, crisp, dry, good smelling air. It was really like Switzerland and Australia kind of had a blend together, a mashup together. Australia's houses and laid backness and friendly people, and then Switzerland's mountains and crisp, fresh air and scenery. And you put them together and my 2 worlds collide and suddenly I don't know what to do with myself. New Zealand's a bit like this, but New Zealand is very humid because it's small island surrounded by a lot of ocean, where Salt Lake City area is away from the ocean, and the Salt Lake is very salty, which dries a lot of the air. As the dog starts barking, oi, shush! All right, it's been 1 hour 30. I think I'm going to wrap up. I talked about the whole conference. I talked about the venue. I've talked about the snowboarding afterwards. I think that's it. This is the first episode without a single comment, which is fine unless something went wrong. But I think it's fine. Thank you for tuning in. Mr. John Myers, you missed out on meeting Kent and on hanging out with me and asking all the questions. We can talk about it offline if you want. Thank you, Kent, for joining for 9 minutes. That just was really interesting and cool to see your perspective on that. And I will see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye. Looking for the button to close.